Good evening. I'm Colleen Feige, the president of the League of Women Voters of Edina, and I'm pleased to welcome you to tonight's candidate forum for House District 49A. Just a quick word about the League of Women Voters. We work routinely to empower, grow, and protect the vote. It's very important, and tonight we're going to show you about empowering the vote by giving you information about an unopposed candidate so that you'll know more about Representative Heather Edelson. Thank you very much, and I'm pleased to introduce tonight's moderator, Deb Brinkman. And Deb, thank you very much. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for attending this forum. The purpose of this evening's forum is to provide an opportunity to hear the candidate, Heather Edelson, for the House District 49A. She will discuss issues that are important to you. We will try to cover as many issues as possible in the time that we have. If your questions are not addressed tonight, feel free to contact her directly. I will now explain the rules and format of tonight's forum. The candidate will remain seated throughout the entire candidate forum. We have allowed 2 minutes for her opening statement and 2 minutes for the question that was sent out in advance. She will then have 1 minute to answer questions that were submitted by the general community before the forum. She will have 2 minutes then to make a closing statement. League volunteers will time her responses and indicate to her when she has 45 seconds remaining, 30 seconds remaining, 15 seconds remaining, and when she must stop. The moderator will ask all questions. League of Women Voters Edina determines which questions will be asked and attempts in good faith to cover the topics of interest indicated by the submitted audience questions. All written questions become the property of the League of Women Voters Edina. A speaker may remove their face mask when making their opening and closing statements or when answering questions. Due to COVID-19, this forum is being delivered live streamed now by the City of Edina on Edina TV, Comcast Channel 813 High Definition, and Comcast Channel 16 Standard Definition. The city website, www.edinamn.gov, and on Facebook, City of Edina, Minnesota. It will be available on Edina TV, YouTube tomorrow, as well as on the League of Women Voters Edina website, lwvedina.org. A schedule for the rebroadcast on the Edina TV times and dates on Comcast channels will be presented immediately following the speaking part of this forum. The forum will also be available for viewing afterwards on the city website, on Facebook, and Edina TV YouTube. All questions were collected electronically from the general community before this forum, and there is no live audience. Now I will introduce you to the candidate for House District 49A. Her name is Heather Edelson. She's the incumbent DFL candidate and is running unopposed in this race. So we'll go next to the opening remarks. Again, you'll have 2 minutes for your opening remarks, Heather.
Thank you, Deb, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting me this evening. My name's Heather Edelson, and I am the state representative for Edina. I have just finished my first term in office, and as was noted here tonight, I am running unopposed, and I think there's a reason for that. In my work in the first two years, my first term, as I was running for office, I made a promise to the people of Edina that I was a moderate, that I was a bipartisan a person who wanted to work across the aisle, and I really delivered on that. I've passed, I believe it's 12 bills in my first term. And over 90% of my bills were bipartisan, where they had a Republican author in the Senate and Republican and Democrats on it in the Minnesota House. I believe that partisan politics just hurt us. sometimes, and the reality is that we have so much more in common than we know. So really, I encourage people to get to know others that disagree with you. Just because you're a Republican or a Democrat does not define you. That being said, I serve on 3 committees. I'm on Education Finance, I'm on Health and Human Service Policy, and I'm also the Vice Chair on Public Safety. I have 3 little boys. We've lived in Edina for almost 10 years now. My kids go to a local public school, and they start on Monday, so I am wearing my mask because we are asking everybody to wear masks, and I think it's important that we as elected officials, if we ask you to do something, that we ourselves do it.
Thank you, Heather. All right, this first question was sent out in advance, so you'll have 2 minutes to answer this question. How do you propose to address Minnesota's budget shortfall? Please discuss solutions such as tax increase, funding cuts to programs, and moving money from other sources.
Well, thank you for that question. It's an important one because it's one that we're going into a budget year in January of 2021, and what we're looking at right now is a current deficit of $2.4 billion. Now, you might think that that is a huge number, and it is, don't get me wrong, but in 2010 we were facing almost a $6 billion deficit. This is not the first time our state has encountered this struggle, but the good or the positive note on this is that when we had faced that deficit in 2010, we were planful. We have a large reserve at $2.3 billion, which will help us in this scenario. But of course, there still will be a shortfall. So we will have to go back to the drawing board and look at cuts. I do not believe that we have to raise taxes. I do think we have some programs that we are funding that maybe are not working. Now, I will tell you that historically we have cut HHS, we have cut higher ed, and I will be fighting to make sure that we are not cutting programs that work for Minnesotans. So going back to that board, looking at where we can cut the programs that are not working, and being really conservative about how we approach this next biennium.
Thank you, Heather. All right, now we are going to proceed to questions that have been submitted by the general public. You'll have 1 minute to answer each question. The first one is, do you favor passing a bonding bill in the legislative session beginning January 2021? Why or why not?
That's a great question. No, I favor passing a bonding bill tomorrow in our special session. So I don't want to pass a bonding bill in January. And if that happens, I'm going to be incredibly frustrated because all of the legislators, there's 201 of them in St. Paul, are not doing their job if we cannot get a bonding bill passed. And that is long before January because we're calling a special session every 30 days. We have a job to do. Right now, I'm hearing a lot of partisan politics on why we can't pass a jobs bill, which is what a bonding bill is. It's a jobs bill. It's going to help our economy. And Minnesotans need this, and I hope that we can get past the partisan politics that are happening right now and actually pass that bonding bill.
Thank you, Heather. The next question is, what projects in your district will be impacted if there is no bonding bill?
Thank you. What will be impacted is we have actually a bill that Senator Franzen and myself are carrying for our public safety center. We have an appropriation for $1 million in the bonding bill for our public safety center where our officers and firefighters, which is a cooperative, though. We share it with Bloomington, Richfield, the airport, the Metropolitan Airport Commission. We have a bonding bill appropriation for that, the public safety center, and I really would like to see that. Our firefighters will tell you that the building that they're using, it needs upgrades, and they're right, and they're not the only firefighters that are using that. So I would be quite disappointed, but Edina does not live in a vacuum. This is a bill that will impact all of us. If clean water doesn't happen in greater Minnesota, if broadband doesn't happen in greater Minnesota, that impacts us all. So what impacts Edina is all of it.
Thank you. The third question is, after George Floyd's death, the public became aware that Minneapolis Police Department Officer Chauvin had 18 prior complaints against him, 2 of which had resulted in disciplinary action. Where do you stand on legislation regarding a Minnesota police database that would disclose to the public all complaints against an individual police officer, and why?
Thank you. And I actually know where that question came from because I'm working with some Edina residents on this. We are exploring a database. It is like broker check. So I don't know if you know anybody in the finance world, but essentially if there's any allegations against somebody that is in the finance world, it goes into a database, and you can search up that person on this database that's open to the public, and you can find if there was any infractions against them. Well, we're looking into a possible database in terms of that. But I also would say we are looking into that this is a process, though, and we are, again, looking at shortfalls, and that would require spending. So we are looking at places and where we would get access to dollars. But I would also say that we did fix some of that because the arbitration system in Minnesota was quite broken, and we did pass some tweaks to that back in August.
Thank you. The next question is, the number of new COVID cases has been at high levels in recent weeks. With the Minnesota Department of Health reporting over 1,000 new cases today, are we doing enough to control the spread of COVID, and what additional measures do you recommend?
Well, I would actually, I would say in terms of where we're at right now, yes, we have a lot of new things that are beginning. But I would also say that with those new beginnings, like schools starting and colleges, college campuses happening, students coming back to school, I would actually say our numbers are in a fairly good spot. And what I am more concerned about is what's going to happen when we go to the fall and how things will change there. Where we see in warmer states, when essentially it was their winter, when it got very hot and everybody was indoors, we saw spikes in numbers then. So I would say we're actually in a fairly good spot. And we really need to be careful as we go into the fall. I think the mask mandate is a must. I think people need to wear their masks. I think that we get COVID fatigue and don't want to wear them. But they are working, and I encourage Minnesotans to continue on that path of wearing your mask.
Thank you, Heather. The next question. The state's reserve has been or will be depleted because of COVID-19 related expenses. What ideas do you have for rebuilding this reserve?
That is a good question, and I guess I would say stay tuned. Right now, I'm just really worried about how we are going to fix that deficit. How we are going to rebuild is, really it's going to be that economy coming back too. And I think our economy, I would just say, is going to bounce back a lot faster if we get through this pandemic and don't draw it out. So I'm really hoping for that vaccine, or if we have a treatment somewhere around December, that people will really consider these treatments or these vaccines. And I know it's scary because it's going to go through a lot faster of a process, but I think if we can get there, we can help our economy bounce back, and that reserve can be rebuilt. I am very positive about that.
All right. Thank you, Heather. The next question is, the Department of Human Services is planning to lay off staff and cut spending on staff-run programs that serve vulnerable populations as well as sex offenders. These changes are projected to save $7.1 million in the current budget cycle and about 10 times that amount in 2022 and 2023. Do you think they'll achieve these savings goals? And please give your reasons why or why not.
some of what we're talking about, what's mentioned here was actually something we passed in the Minnesota House, which was a deficiency spending with the the program that you were talking about. And we're closing 2 prisons. It may be more. And these are jobs. These are jobs for Minnesotans. I listened on a committee hearing last week as I listened to correction officers talk about how both spouses who are parents all work at this prison that rehabilitates people in their community. Yes, this is going to be a huge problem of where we decide what programs are worthy. And that is a tricky conversation that there's not an easy answer to. And so anybody that says there is, I wish you well. But the reality is we did pass that deficiency spending. So some of these programs would not have been cut if, in fact, the Senate would have passed them. They did not do that, and here we are today.
Thank you, Heather. The next question is, when parents separate, current Minnesota statute has a presumption 25% of parenting time for the non-custodial parent. Given that many in today's world believe that both parents should be valued equally, would you support a presumption of equal shared parenting to replace the current 25% presumption? Why or why not?
Thank you for the question. This has been a really heated topic at the Capitol because listen, shared parenting sounds great. Of course, I support shared parenting. But now what we're doing is we're going in and we're removing power from the courts system. And we're changing, there's 12 best interest factors when you are awarding custody in a family law proceeding. So that's considered. And then, I heard, initially I did support this bill. I supported it at the legislature because overwhelmingly, yes, I want both parents to be involved. But the reality is I also was approached by domestic abuse shelters that said that this creates a burden for families as well. And so it's shifting the burden. And I just don't know that we have the right bill yet. I do feel for the group that is advocating for this bill because it is a good cause. We just have to make sure that it is going to be just and that we are listening to all voices.
Great. Thank you. I know a minute goes fast, doesn't it?
It does. I like the bell that rings, though.
Yeah.
That's okay. It's great.
Okay, the next question is, what kind of statewide testing should be done in Minnesota high schools to measure whether students are on track for college and career success?
That is a good question. Well, I had a bill to remove the Minnesota Comprehension Assessment Test, the MCA. And I would say, why is it that we need in high school this large test in 10th and 11th grade to say, oh, you're ready to go to the next level? Students are made up of way more than the test scores that they have. They're leaders in their debate teams. They are volunteering in our communities. They have grades at the end of a class. So the MCA, if they get a bad grade, does that mean they're a bad student? Absolutely not. And I think that we have to reevaluate this. And so, do I think there needs to be a test to make sure that we're doing our job? Yes, but we need to look holistically at people, and one test does not provide that.
Great. Thank you. The next one is, what are some of your ideas for potential policy solutions for youth tobacco use, including ending the sale of all flavored tobacco products and investing in youth tobacco prevention?
This is one of my areas of that I've worked a lot at the legislature. Here in Edina, before I was elected, I worked on Edina becoming the first city in the state of Minnesota to pass Tobacco 21. I recently passed Tobacco 21 on the state level right before we ended session in May. I have worked with students on with a group of students from Edina where we passed legislation just last year that addresses the fact that in middle school, students have to be taught about the harms of tobacco. Tobacco companies look very different than how they did when I was growing up. There is flavored tobacco, and they are targeting youth with cool technology, with hoodies that you can suck the vape juice right through like the hoodie hole. It's amazing how they are being creative and how they're doing this. So I'm going to continue to listen and work with youth on the best ways to really make sure that they have a seat at that table, because I truly believe they're the ones that are being targeted, and because tobacco is looking for their next client for the next 20 years. And I will keep looking and hearing and working on solutions for that.
Great. Thank you, Heather. The next one has to do, again, still with some products. Are you in favor of legalizing recreational use of marijuana? Why or why not?
I historically no, and I still don't know that I'm a yes on that. I have been for expanding and making more accessible medical cannabis, but I grew up in a home where there was addiction, and not just addiction to alcohol, but to other drugs. And marijuana was smoked in my home as a child, and it has a horrendous smell. And I just yes, I think that there should not be criminal penalties, and we have to decriminalize. But how do we also not encourage people to do? I don't know. It's not an easy yes or no on that. But I am willing to listen, because I do realize that there's a criminal justice component to this that cannot be ignored.
Thank you. And the last question that we have this evening is, what ideas do you have for the future of the state of Minnesota legislative actions during the next 2 years that we have not addressed with our questions?
When I went to the legislature, I ran because I grew up to a single mom, really poor. We had public assistance. We didn't have insurance sometimes. I never had a car growing up. And now I live in Country Club. Nobody looks at me and knows that I went to food shelves, that we struggled, a real struggle like so many Minnesotans. And I think we have to address how we care for one another, especially over the next 2 years, because it's going to be a hard next 2 years. How we treat our most vulnerable says a lot about who we are, and I know as Minnesotans, we are caring people. So what is not addressed in this is where we make cuts is I hope we continue to help.
Thank you. So that is all the questions that we have for this evening. Now we'll go to our closing statement.
Well, thank you to the League of Women Voters. Thank you to Deb for moderating this. It is my great honor to be the state representative for our city, for the city of Edina. I love our community. It's been great to see how people have helped one another, how they're helping our schools. I shopped for seniors starting in March, and I was impressed to see over 60 volunteers from our Edina community show up at Cub Foods and help shop for other people, for seniors that could not go to the grocery store in our community. I've seen kids create art for seniors. This pandemic is hard. Parents are sending their kids to school with a mask all day and hoping that their kids don't have a slip, that they're still going to be educated. We have kids and people with disabilities that want to make sure that their families are protected. And I promise you, if you have an issue, I want you to call me. I want you to pick up the phone and call me, and I want you to email me, because I am here for you. You elected me, and it wasn't because I was red or because I was blue. It's because I am somebody that cares about you regardless of party, and we are going to get through this pandemic, and we are going to get through the next 2 years, and we are going to succeed, and we're going to do that together. So let's do that. Let's remember that we are not as divided as some people want to make us believe.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Heather Edelson, for participating in this forum and for your willingness to participate in a democratic process by running for office. Thank you to the League of Women Voters Edina for sponsoring this forum. The forum is being videotaped and will be made available for viewing online through the City of Edina and for rebroadcast on Edina TV on Comcast channels 813 and channel 16, the City of Edina's website, and on Facebook. It will be available on Edina TV YouTube tomorrow. The forum will also be available for viewing on the League of Women Voters website, lwvedina.org. Thank you for attending tonight's forum. Please remember to vote by Tuesday, November 3rd. This concludes the forum for the House District 49A. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great evening.